My name is Kathleen, your host for today's Zone 7 Gardening. The topic today is spring blooming shrubs. Zone 7 Gardening virtual plant clinics highlight native and other plants suited to grow well in our mid-Atlantic hardiness zones. This series of plant clinics is sponsored by the Virginia Cooperative Extension program of Virginia's two land-grant universities. For today's program, we'll be talking about spring blooming shrubs, including camellia, which you see on the left, and sweet shrub in the center with its gorgeous maroon blossoms. And so I'll turn it over to you, Tanya.
Thank you so much, Kathleen. All right, well, thank you for joining us today. Whoops, as I zoom past my own first slide. What is the Calycanthus floridus, the sweet shrub, the Carolina allspice, the plant of 1,000 names is what I've decided to call it as I was doing my research today. It is a native shrub, which if you look at that third bullet right there, it's a native along the eastern US. All the way from New Orleans, which I know is a city, to New York, which is a state. But not in New Jersey, which I just thought was weird. So it's also in Illinois, but not in Indiana. Though I have to say, people love the shrub. And so that's where they are found natively, but they are also found in a lot of other states because people want to make them work where they live. And you'll find out why here in just a minute. So the fragrance of the blooms is the biggest appeal about this plant. They're also a really cool shape, as you can see from that photo. They bloom from April to July. Generally, the blooms come out before the leaves, but sometimes they come out with the leaves. And then throughout the summer, you might even get a couple of extra bonus flowers just because they are a plant that gives and keeps on giving. There is a suggestion to pick your plant when it is in bloom and when a day is really, really warm, because that's when their fragrance is the strongest. They are highly fragrant and kind of like a berry. It's a combination of pineapple, strawberry, and banana is the way people have described it. So some people actually call this the strawberry bush, though that gets confusing because there are a lot of strawberry bushes out there. One of them is a euonymus, and that's completely different. So make sure you know that you're getting your Calycanthus whenever you're trying to find this shrub. The bloom colors are usually blood red to reddish brown, but as you'll see here in a little bit, there are actually some varieties that they have now that will give you like a cream colored bloom, white, even green. So it's pretty exciting. There's also some fruits, and I've got a picture of it here in a minute that I'll show you. They appear in the fall. They're 2 to 3 inches long. Usually 1 or 2 of the varieties can get up to 6 inches long for a seed pod. So they're kind of interestingly shaped. And so it's a cool plant. The best conditions for this plant is someplace where it can grow 6 to 9 feet in height. So it needs to be at least 3 feet on either side from other shrubs because it can really grow and grow huge. It's highly adaptable to a lot of different conditions, though it prefers some partial shade to sun, especially when it's really hot outside. We want to keep it out of the direct hot afternoon sun, but it can be on the west, south, or east side of a building. And it could also be out in the middle of your yard if you want to. It will grow less dense than you see in this picture if it's grown in the shade. The reason why you want to plant this plant is because there are no serious insect or disease problems. Deer don't even tend to eat it very much. So the biggest problem it might have would be powdery mildew. And if you have been trained as we have as master gardeners, we know that that's like a visual problem and not an actual problem to the plant. So you might not like the way it looks necessarily, but it's actually not going to kill your plant. So that's the only big disease. It can sucker, which means that the roots will be growing out along the ground and extra bonus plants come up. And so if you don't want it to do that, then you need to keep that under control. But as we're going to talk about, if you want to use it in your landscape as a hedge or as some kind of sound blocking, then that suckering is great because it just means it's going to keep on growing and growing and growing as long as you keep it in the direction you want. So the benefits of this plant, it's predominantly pollinated by sap beetles. You can see that there's no like little trumpet kind of shape to it for like a hummingbird to get in to get nectar. They're kind of open. And so think about things that crawl or flies and beetles and some other insects like it, as that's how they get pollinated. It is a good nesting site for birds because it's a shrub, right? And that's where they like to build their little nest. They can still see out. And when the flies come to pollinate, they can grab them and then they can feed them to their babies. So it is a good nesting site for birds. The flowers are very interesting. It's a different shape than what you might see. There's fall color and interest because you saw that yellow picture in the previous slide. So it's going to be a good one to keep around. The fruits that you see in this picture, those persist throughout the winter. It's definitely an interesting shape. And if you are like I am, and I like to leave my garden as pure as it can be without having to get out there every day and prune things, these would be kind of cool to have hanging out while there's snow on the ground. It does work well to anchor soil in place. So if you have a slope that tends to wash out and you want to put some gorgeous native plants there, this is a good one to do that. And it is propagated by seed. So, and those suckers that I talked about a minute ago. So if you want it to keep on growing, just grab some seed pods and see what you can do with those. Landscape use, you can definitely do this one as a specimen. It is cool enough for sure in 3 or 4 seasons really for it to be its own plant. You can use it as a hedge or screening. As I mentioned, that suckering is going to help you to get the more dense kind of a hedge there to give you screening from your neighbors or whatever unsightly things you're trying to hide, utility boxes or whatever. You can do it as a mass planting so that they're all blooming at the same time and the fragrance would be super, super wonderful. So make sure you put a bench or put it next to your front door so that you can actually enjoy that fragrance. I mentioned erosion control. Foundation plantings, this one is a good one, as we've mentioned, every side of your house except for the north side, and it'll do just fine there. It's actually suitable for fresh cut arrangements. The stems are a little woody, so it's not gonna, who knows how long it's gonna last. I have had 2 sweet shrubs, I must admit, and one of them, I think I just didn't water enough, to be honest. And my second one is about 2 years old and hasn't bloomed for me yet. So I'll stay posted. Maybe we'll do another one of these in a couple of years and I can report back on how well the blooms survive in a vase for me. This one's a really, really great plant as a background for a whole lot of other plants. 6 to 9 feet tall. That's huge, right? A lot of things could go in front of him. And so some of the natives that we might suggest would be a serviceberry. If you have ever seen that plant, I know that there's a Zone 7 recorded series here on our Fairfax County Master Gardener site that we did last year on serviceberry. That's a really great companion plant. The pink azalea that's in bloom right now, as you're driving along the road, you can see these peeking out along a lot of the woods in Fairfax County. So that's a good one. Flowering dogwood is another really great companion plant. And ferns, like who doesn't love ferns? But that's a really great around the front as an underplanting for that. So the varieties and cultivars, I told you we would get there. Aphrodite is a bright red flower and it is intentionally a rebloomer. So if you really like the shape of the flower and you would like to make sure it happens throughout the summer, go get you an Aphrodite version of the Calycanthus. White to yellow flowers, they call them Athens. They also call them Catherine as a variety. And so take a look at for one of those. The Edith Wilder has huge fragrance and fall intense color. So that's a good thing to know. If you like the shiny leaves, then look for the Michael Lindsay. If you want some wine colored petals, if that's your jam and you've got that kind of stuff going on in your garden, then the Hartledge wine is what you're looking for. The margarita is harder to find, but it also has yellow flowers. And the purpureus, which I thought was a fun name to say, has purplish leaves. And so there you go. I'm sure that you're going to want to go get one of these immediately because who doesn't want one? And so big old line of resources. If you go to any native garden center, you should be able to find these. They're pretty popular. I've even seen them in a lot of the catalogs that have come out so far this spring. So good luck and grab you a Calycanthus.
Thank you, Tanya. What great information and what an adaptable shrub. And I noticed that there were some smaller varieties in your cultivars. So that's great. Part 2, we're going to be talking about Camellia japonica, and I'd like to introduce Elizabeth for this next presentation.
Hello, everyone. This is truly a Southern favorite, and I'd like to share a personal story. When my husband and I were dating, he lived in Florida, and my family lived in Michigan, and he came for a visit, and he brought my mother a floral box filled with camellias and Spanish moss. And he immediately jumped from just an also ran to the top of her favorite boyfriend list. So I think camellias are very beguiling plants and one to enjoy. The Camellia japonica is native to Korea, China, and parts of Japan. It was named after a Jesuit missionary and naturalist, George Joseph Camel, who introduced the shrub to Europe from the Philippine Islands in 1607. And Camillus is the Latin name for camel, which gives credit where credit is due. I just wanted you to see the camellia plant, the camellia shrub, how large it is, and how overwhelming the blooms can be. To describe it, it is an evergreen, broadleaf, woody tree or shrub. It is quite large, 15 feet tall, having a spread of 10 feet wide. It's upright and dense, formal appearing, and it has beautiful, glossy, dark green foliage. The flowers are large, ranging from 2 to 5 inches wide. They're white, pink, and red, and variants in between. And it blooms from the late winter to early spring, depending on the zone it's in. The climate conditions suitable for USDA plant hardiness 7 to 9, and we're kind of on the edge of that. Fairfax County does have some zone 6B, and 7 is kind of the tolerance for where camellias do well. They flourish in warm, humid summers and moderately cold, dry winters. And predominantly they're found in the southern states, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, down through California and up the West Coast. And Virginia marks the northern range for these shrubs to survive outside. They can be grown in greenhouses, but as far as outside survival, Virginia Zone 7 is the place. The site selection, camellia prefer shade to part shade. They're often planted against walls for protection from winter winds and winter scorch. They need average to moist water. The soil needs to be well drained, high in organic matter, with a pH between 3.5 to 6.5. Temperature, they're hardy to 0 degrees in winter. And harsh winter may delay the blooms. Benefits. Attractive flowers blooming up for 3 to 4 weeks and lush foliage, sure to make sure your boyfriend jumps to the top of your mother's boyfriend list. It attracts pollinators and provides cover for wintering birds, and it provides wildlife cover and habitat. And you can see from the picture how dense and how thick it is. So it would be someplace to shelter birds and other wildlife. Pets and diseases. Remember, this is a subtropical plant. So for the most part, it's going to be growing in moist and warm climates, maybe a little different than what we have in Virginia. But for that reason, because it's growing in moist and warm climates, there are going to be common diseases and common insects. And so the dead wood will attract scale insects, aphids, two-spotted spider mites, thrips, mealybugs. And common diseases are Phytophthora, root rot, and bacterial leaf spot if it's grown in a greenhouse. So that's one of the decided disadvantages. You have to be very much looking out for these diseases, especially if you're in a warm, moist climate. Okay, landscape use. Asian gardens, children gardens, edible gardens, pollinator gardens, cottage-style foundation planting, water features, and woodland walks. So there are quite a few places that you can use camellias. However, you need to make sure you're allowing adequate space for the 15 feet tall and 10 feet wide that they turn out to be. And for planting, you want to make sure that you reduce competition from water and nutrients surrounding the plants and trees. And you allow generous space between the shrubs. And the rule of thumb is to, when you have your root ball, allow 3 to 4 times wider than the diameter of the root ball from where you're planting. With regard to use and care, they're slow to grow, especially in Zone 7 Virginia, and they're slow to establish, but they are long-lived plants. And what you want to do is to mulch to protect shallow roots, water thoroughly at least once a week during hot weather, prune in the spring after flowering, and prune deadwood anytime to prevent insect infestation. Recommended propagation is stem cutting. I'd like to add some information I did not include in my slides that I found recently. Camellias have no scent whatsoever. However, the oil from the leaves and the flowers are used in botanical skincare products. So I think that's a very interesting thing to note, that these are used in botanical products, skincare products. And I'm showing you two different cultivars that are very good in Virginia. There are other cultivars, many different cultivars, but these two tend to be very good for our Virginia climate, which is kind of on the edge of where camellias do well. In my resources, I would like to advertise a Virginia Cooperative Extension fact sheet called Japanese Camellia. And then there was a very interesting article called Winter Bloomer from Virginia Living. That is not considered to be a scientific publication. However, the illustrations and the information was very interesting to read. And then, of course, we have our North Carolina Extension Gardener Plant Toolbox, which I think is just an outstanding resource for anything that you would want to know about herbaceous plants and so on. Very complete, very exhaustive, very thorough. And if you're interested in other cultivars that I did not include, they have plenty listed there. So that's the information we have today about camellia. They're gorgeous plants, and I hope you will be adventurous and try to start growing some.
Thank you so much, Elizabeth. I actually have, I think, over half a dozen camellias in my yard because I have a shady backyard. We started out with 3 about 17 years ago, and they have grown so magnificently that we've added, I think, 3 or 4 more over the years.
Have you had pest problems?
Not much. I did have a problem with scale about 2 years back. And I learned you have to treat this particular scale. It was Cottony Camellia scale. You have to treat it when the scale is crawling. A scale insect like attaches itself to the twig or to the leaf, and it like hides under a little cap. And when it's doing that, I guess it's not hibernating, but it's not active at that time. But it does hatch out and crawl around on the plant, and it does that in June. So you have to treat it at the time when it's a crawler in order to get rid of them. But there is, I forget the name of the chemical, but if you visit your nursery, they can advise you and tell you which chemical to use. I used what was considered, you pour it into the soil so that the plant absorbs it through its roots and then is able to get rid of the scale insect. Well, we thought we would talk a little bit about watering, and I'm wondering if one of the other Master Gardeners who's on right now has something to share on the topic. In our climate, and pretty much in any climate, it's best to water plants early in the day, like in the morning. And also in our climate, which is subject to a lot of heat and humidity, it's also best to keep the water off the leaves, but to water at the base of the plant. Because if you get water on the leaves, that can lead to mildew and problems like that. How do I know when a plant needs water? I'm talking mostly about outside plants. Well, watching when you're getting rain is helpful because your average plant needs 1 inch of water per week. So if you're getting 1 inch of rain each week, it's probably not going to need water. If you're not, it will need some water. You have to actually, there is a, I believe it's called a hydrometer. There is an instrument you can stick into the soil to determine if it's really dry. I'm not that all sophisticated. I literally take my gardening gloves off, pull the mulch away, examine the soil, and even stick my fingers into the soil to see how wet or dry it appears to be. And in Virginia, it's pretty clear when it's dry, because we have such heavy clay soil, it's going to be hard packed And at that point, your plant is probably really drooping. So that's the way to examine the situation when a plant needs watering. Also, like I just mentioned, if the plant is drooping, if leaves are dying, it might actually be too late for the plant if leaves are dying and falling off. So you do want to pay attention to the condition of your plants and water as needed.
Kathleen, we did have one question, and that
Okay.
is, how do you know how much to water?
I just planted shrubs and I'm just learning about these things, but it's usually the general advice is not to water too lightly, not to sprinkle just a little tiny bit, because then your average plant is going to get water at the roots that are near the surface, but that's not so good because you want the plant to develop roots that are deeper. So it's better to water less frequently and more deeply. So how do I know how much to water? With a shrub, it depends on the size of the plant. Obviously, a small plant is going to have a small root ball and not going to need a lot of water. So something you've just planted doesn't need to be drowned in a gallon of water. It just needs a few ounces of water. However, the bigger the plant, the more water it's going to need. So if you're talking about a shrub, we just actually installed some shrubs, and the advice from the nursery was to give the shrubs 15 minutes of a small amount of water, like a trickle of water coming out of the hose, so that it's thoroughly watered. And a tree, I think they said 20 minutes or something like that. I actually learned a while back, like with lawns, that 1 inch a week is what you need. So if you're not getting the rain, you can actually put out a tuna fish can, which is about 1 inch deep. And if you're sprinkling in the morning, which is when you should be watering your lawn, if the sprinkle is falling into that tuna fish can, you will be able to see how much water has accumulated, whether it's like 1/4 of an inch, 1/2 inch, or 1 inch. And here's what we've been talking about several times today. Our website, I've circled the address there, fairfaxgardening.org. Search for monthly gardening articles and advice at our website. In other words, this website is updated each month. And you can actually subscribe by email to receive notices when the site is updated. We also have an Instagram account. You can follow us on Instagram at fairfax.master.gardeners. Our YouTube channel. We have actually been doing these virtual plant clinics for over a year, and they've been recorded. You can find past presentations on our YouTube channel, searching VCE-Fairfax County. Thank you, everybody, for attending. We hope to see you again soon.